Hey everybody, welcome back to Read by Ross, the show where I read books for you and then I comment on them. I need to think of a better intro for this channel. So as most of you probably would like to figure out is that, as a reader and a writer, I want to try and read as much as I possibly can to see where my interests lie and where I kind of enjoy new things. And I've read everything from Japanese contemporary to Scottish, grand epics. And I've even read, short stories, poetry, and all this sort of weird stuff. But the one type of books that I could just never quite possibly get myself into was Russian novels. And Russian literature, particularly Russian fiction, is very hard for a lot of ways to try and get yourself into. Like I tried reading Fyodor Dostoevsky's Notes from the Underground, and even though the book is literally pencil thin, it took me months to finish because of the heaviness and the structure and the layer of the books. So when I tried reading another Russian novel 2 years ago, I never got quite through it. However, after many arguments with a friend of mine and somebody who just said I had to read this book, I finally sat down with a better frame of mind and a better way of looking at it, and I finally finished reading what I can consider possibly a masterpiece in its own right. It's vivid, it's dark, and it's visually incredible, but I will let the book describe that for itself when I have read The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. Now, The Master and Margarita is a book about essentially hell. We meet three characters who are essentially the equivalent of Mephistopheles from Faust. One of them being the devil and the other two just being the Mephistopheles character. One of them being a cat called Behemoth, which, even though I'm allergic to cats, if I ever get a cat, that is the best name for a cat ever, Behemoth, and I have to get it just for that alone. In the book, it doesn't really just follow, it follows them just kind of creating chaos in this town of Russia. And they take over a arts festival, they take over a hotel, they corrupt the minds of people who are already slightly corrupted along the way, whether it be through pride, jealousy, ego, all the sort of natural bad thoughts and morality problems. And we come across a character who mainly calls himself the Master. Master is struggling trying to finish writing a book about Pontius Pilate. It is his life's dream, and he's been living in his basement with his wife, who he appropriately calls Margarita, and he's just trying his hardest to finish this book, and it's driving him insane to the point that he has to spend time in an insane asylum, in an insane clinic. And the devil sort of finds his way getting interfered in between these two people, and because of this he ends up being in a sort of like love triangle. He doesn't really he wants Margarita, he doesn't act on it, but like he wants to consume her, but she's so preoccupied of trying to save her husband, to try and save the Master, that all he can really do is say, I'll help you both. If you kind of like, not in a sort of justified way of selling your soul to the devil, but in a way of saying that you have to come under my control. In a lot of ways, you are reading this book and the descriptions of the chaos and the insanity that ensues are so heavy based in the reality of the story that you don't even think for a second that nobody would ever believe this. But because Mikhail Bulgakov puts in this world where you're kind of like, yeah, in this reality, it could only make sense here, to a small Russian town, you walk away from it going, yes, I can understand that. This guy has turned up, he's the devil, and he produces black magic for people, and he makes people go insane with that idea. There's a smartness to this devil that has been written, there's a smartness to the level of the hell that has been created in the book. As well as this, and I've got to say this now, for a fictional book, it understands a person's struggle with mental health way before anybody else does. Now, Mikhail Bulgakov was a doctor. He was a trained doctor. He was actually a really respected one. And you could tell that he's probably had experiences working with people in his medical facility of having mental health problems, because this book ultimately proves the problems that they go through. They describe why they can't sleep at night. They describe why they feel more comfortable at night, and they're just so broken down and bombarded by society. Now, these aren't just like, these aren't just, problems that any fictional character come up with, but this is something really personal and homegrown, and only Bulgakov could have gotten that across if he had spent time with people in his medical practice that was feeling the exact same way. And for that, it is incredible. Another thing that the book masters is that you're actually able to read the chapters of the book about Pontius Pilate that takes place that the author is writing. And I'm not going to lie to you, and this is going to upset a few people when I say this, I found it kind of boring. It was a distract. I was more interested in learning about what the devil was doing next, and where his actions were going, and what he was wanting to do, and how he was going to take over the rest of Russia. And whenever the Pontius Pilate parts of the book came up, I just sat there reading it going, I don't really care for what's happening, you know? It was kind of like, it's like being thrown into the deep end. You're not really fed much of the story. You're only fed snippets of what it is that this writer is terminally going through when he's writing these passages. And I thought it was going to be a mirror situation about how, you know, this guy was writing all these passages in the book and it was actually repeating what is happening right now in his situation. But that doesn't really happen. That's just something minor for me to complain about. But for other than that, it's okay. But the Pontius Pilate stuff, I could have left it without it. I mean, other than the part, there's a very graphic scene that I won't spoil because, you know, like, I should point this out. This book is actually very graphically violent in a large part of the way. And we've got decapitations, we've got stabbings, we've got witches, you know, flying naked, we've got breaking glass. This is a very interesting book to read. And, you know, I've got this weird expanded edition where, you know, it even goes as far as to not only give you a biography about Bulgakov, but actually gives you, where is it, the opening pages of the book as it was written in its Russian language. Here it is. As you can see here, like, you know, like look at that. Like, that's Russian language right there. I don't know if my camera could do it good enough. There. Look at it, like, mad. So yeah, that is Master and Margarita. Quite possibly one of the best surreal, bizarre books about hell I have ever came across. And I would put it as close to say it resembles Faust in a lot of ways. It actually references Faust an awful lot in this book. And Faust is just it's one of my favourite stories ever written. And this book is not only a beautiful reference to that, but a beautiful homage as well. Even though it goes in a completely different direction to what Faust goes to. The finale of this book, and everything else in this book, if you're a fan of Russian literature, and if you're a fan of Bulgakov in general, then you obviously have this book in your collection. And I can understand why. It's vibrant, it's dark, it's surreal, but most of all, it's got a very mutual moral lesson, which is that hell doesn't exist. It's in the choices that people make. And when you're reading these books and you're seeing the characters make choices in their story that ultimately concludes with them going through something rather traumatic and rather evil, you walk away from it going, they've got nobody else to blame but themselves for the problems. And by the end of the book, there's a beautiful written epilogue where it not really ties up everything together, but it just shows you the extent of what bad that they went through to get to where they are now. And because of that, it is a well-told book, a very natural book about hell and the devil that I've ever came across. And I am glad I gave it a read, because when I first read it, I got 2-3 chapters in and I put it down. But I came back to it 2 years later, as I promised, and was thoroughly blown away by this book. So if you've not read it, give it a read. If you have, recommend me more Bulgakov or more Russian novels, because this was something else. Okay, now this about wraps it up here by Read by Ross. Join me next time where I'll do another book review. I don't know what I'll review next, but I might do a top 5 or something like that soon. But we'll wait and see. If you have any books you'd like me to review or any book recommendations you'd like me to read, please get in contact and let me know. But until then, my name is Ross Setburner. I read it and I wish I hadn't. That's a terrible catchphrase. Why would I say that?